Welcome to Campfire Stories 3. 1. The Smiling Man. Alright everyone, get close and cozy, because I've got a story that'll make you think twice about wandering off, alone in the dark. This is the tale of the Smiling Man. It was a crisp autumn evening. Jane decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. She had just finished a long shift at work and needed some fresh air. The streets were quiet, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath her feet and the occasional hoot of an owl. As Jane walked down her usual route, she noticed something odd. Up ahead, a man standing on the sidewalk facing her. What struck her was the strange smile on the man's face. It was wide, unusual, like something out of a cartoon. But what made it even more unsettling was the man didn't seem to move. He just stood there, grinning. Jane quickened her pace, trying to shake off the unease creeping up her spine. As she drew closer, she noticed that the man's smile didn't waver. It was as if his lips were frozen in a grotesque grin. She could now see his eyes, cold, unblinking. When she was about to pass him, he did something bizarre. He tilted his head, still smiling, and took a step towards her. Jane's heart raced. She hurried past him, not daring to look at him. But just as she was about to turn the corner, she heard it. Faint, hollow laughter, like a child giggling, but twisted. Jane glanced back and saw the man still standing there, his head tilted even further. His smile stretched impossibly wide. He hadn't moved from that spot, but his gaze seemed to follow her. Jane quickened her pace into a run. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the man somehow was following her, even if he wasn't moving. She reached her house, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her keys. She slammed the door behind her and locked it tight. She peered through the window, expecting to see the man lingering outside, but the street was empty, save for a few stray leaves dancing in the wind. Thinking she imagined the whole thing, Jane tried to shake off her fear, but later that night, she was laying in bed. She heard a soft knock on her window. She froze, and her blood ran cold. The knock came again, and with it a voice. Almost childlike whisper. "Are you still there?" Jane mustered her courage to check, and she saw the man's face pressed against the glass, his smile wider than ever, his eyes dark and hollow. She screamed and backed away, but it was too late. The last thing she heard was the chilling, mocking laughter, and the lights went out. No one ever saw Jane again. Some say she vanished without a trace. Others say she's still out there, running from the endless smile. So remember, the next time you're out there alone at night, if you see someone grinning from the shadows, you might want to run, because sometimes the smile hides something much, much darker. 2. The Yellow Ribbon. Jane wore a yellow ribbon around her neck every day, and I mean every day. Rain, shine, no matter the weather, it matched her outfit or not. It annoyed her best friend Johnny. After a while, he was her next-door neighbor and had known Jane since they were 3. When he was young, he had barely noticed the yellow ribbon, but now that they were in high school together, it bothered him. "Why do you wear that yellow ribbon around your neck, Jane?" he asked every day, but she wouldn't tell him. Still, despite this, Johnny thought she was cute. He asked her to go to the soda shop with him for an ice cream sundae. Then he asked her to watch him play in the football game. Then he started to see her home every day. Then, come spring, he asked her to the dance. Jane always said yes when he asked her out, and she always wore the yellow dress to match the yellow ribbon around her neck. It finally occurred to Johnny that Jane and him were going steady, and he still didn't know why she wore the yellow ribbon around her neck. So he asked her about it again, And yet again she did not tell him. "Maybe someday I'll tell you about it," she replied. Someday. That answer annoyed Johnny, but he shrugged it off because Jane was so cute and fun to be with. Well, time flew past as it has a habit of doing, and one day Johnny proposed to Jane, and she accepted. They planned a big wedding, and Jane hinted that she might tell him about the yellow ribbon around her neck. But somehow, what with the preparations and his beautiful bride and the lovely reception, Johnny never got around to asking Jane about it. And when he did remember, she got a bit teary-eyed and said, "We are so happy together. What difference does it make?" And Johnny decided that she was right. Johnny and Jane raised a family of 4, with the usual ups and downs, laughter and tears. And when their golden anniversary rolled around, Johnny once again asked about the yellow ribbon around her neck. It was the first time he had brought it up since the week after their wedding. Whenever their children asked him about it, he always hushed them, and somehow none of the kids dared ask their mother. Jane gave Johnny a sad look. "Johnny, you've waited this long. Can you wait a while longer?" And Johnny agreed. It wasn't until a year later, when Jane was on her deathbed, Johnny, seeing his last chance slip away, he asked Jane, one final time, about the yellow ribbon that she wore around her neck. She shook her head a bit at his persistence, and then said, with a sad smile, "Okay, Johnny, you can go ahead and untie it now." And with shaky hands, Johnny fumbled with the knot and untied the yellow ribbon around his wife's neck. Just as he removed it, Jane's head fell into his lap. 3. Girl at the Underpass. Not long ago, but before the interstate highways ran along the towns and cities, a young man left Greensboro late at night to drive to his old home in Lexington. At that time, just east of Jamestown, there was an old road that dipped through a tunnel under the train tracks. The young man knew this road well, but there was a thick fog, and it was early summer, and he drove cautiously, especially when he neared Jamestown's underpass. Many wrecks had taken place in this spot. He slowed down on the curve leading into the tunnel, and halfway through, his eyes almost popped out of his head when standing on the roadside, just beyond the underpass, was a white figure with its arms raised in a gesture of distress. The young man quickly slammed on his brakes and came to a stop before the figure. It was a girl, young and beautiful, resplendent, with long white evening gown. Her troubled eyes were glaring straight towards him. Obviously she was in need. He jumped from his car and ran over to where she was. She stood motionless. "Can I help you?" "Yes." Her voice was low. "I want to go home. I live in High Point." He opened the door and she got in. As they drove off, he said, "I'm glad I came by. I didn't expect to find anyone like you on the road this late at night." She responded, "I was at a dance." She spoke in monotone. "My date and I had a quarrel, and it was very bad. I made him drop me off there." He tried to continue the conversation, but she would not respond any more. She did not respond until they got to High Point. "Turn at the next left," she said. "I live 3 doors on the right." He parked before a darkened house and got out of the car and went around to open the door for her, but there was no one there. He looked in the back seat, and no one. He thought she might have rushed up the sidewalk and out of sight. Confused on what to do next, he thought it was only reasonable to find out if she'd entered the house. He went up to the steps and knocked on the door. No one came, so he knocked again. There was no sound anywhere. After a third knock, a dim light appeared on the pitch-black hallway. Finally, the door was opened by a white-haired woman in a nightrobe. "I brought a girl to this house," he explained, "but now I can't find her. Have you seen her? I picked her up at the highway." "Where?" replied the old lady. "At the Jamestown underpass. She told me that she had been to a dance and was on her way home." "Yes, I know what she said. That's my daughter. She was killed in a wreck at the tunnel 5 years ago." Tonight, I was expecting this. Every year since, on this very night. Young men like you pick her up, and she's still trying to get home. The young man turned from the doorway speechless. The dim light of the house went out, and he drove back to Lexington. But he never forgot, nor will he ever forget, the beautiful hitchhiker, and how she vanished into the night. Thank you for listening to these Campfire Tales. If you enjoyed them, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss out on a creepy tale. And remember, don't shoot the messenger.